Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Everyday Equity. You know what time it is? It is Thursday night. So that means we are talking all things equity, all things resources, all things fairness, really all things how we can be better and make other people better. I'm your host, Dr. Matisa Wilbon, and I'm so excited to be here with you tonight on this Thursday night. I don't know about you, but in Atlanta, it was an amazing day. It was a little bit crisp because it's fall, but the sun was shining. It was just an amazing day, and I'm excited to have this conversation. Now, I know, as I say every week, we are building our audience. We've only been doing this for several weeks now. I know some of you have had your notifications on and you're ready, but there are other people who need a little bit of a nudge. So I need you to do me a favor. Do what I'm about to do. I need you to get your phone, your device, and I need you to share it with everybody on your timeline. Why am I sharing, Dr. Matisa? You're sharing because somebody needs to hear this message tonight. Hey, Mari, good to see you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I promise you this is going to be a great conversation. It's going to provide a lot of information and resources. And really, we're just going to talk about what we can do to be better and make the world around us better. Okay. So before I bring our guest on, I need us to get these numbers up. Do me a favor, do what I'm doing. I need you to go and hit share. It is absolutely positively not going to cost you anything, but I bet you it's going to help somebody. Hey, Regina, good to see you. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for being on so often. I really appreciate it. I see those of you all who have shared already. I'm about to start sharing right now because I believe that this conversation is going to be important. Thank you for sharing, Regina. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I am sharing with my communities and I'm in a number of them. So bear with me. And then we're going to bring our guest on and we'll have this discussion. All right. So go ahead and share. So as I'm sharing, you might be asking the question, what in the world is everyday equity? Let me tell you, everyday equity is the opportunity to have a conversation with those people who are in the diversity, equity, and inclusion field or I should say those people who really just want to provide the resources and the things necessary to make sure we're all as much as possible on the same level playing field. Last week, if you recall, when we talked about what equity is and what it is not, we talked about the fact that equity is a journey. It's not a destination, that it's a verb, it's not a noun, that it's not something that we achieve, but it's something that we're always in the business of doing. This is the way I think about it. And I'll tell this story as folks are coming on. And I want you to keep sharing. I'm telling you, this is going to be a great conversation. So you need to be in the room. Let me tell you a story that I think for me kind of solidifies why I do this work. And I'm still sharing. So when I was young, probably around fifth grade, I remember being in a particular class, and some of my classmates might be on, so I'm not going to talk about it too much. They may remember exactly what I'm talking about. But there was a young student in this class. She was a friend of mine, but she was extremely shy. She was shy to the point where she barely opened her mouth. Hair was a little bit disheveled, didn't look maybe the best. And that's interesting because I'm from Eastern Kentucky. So there were a lot of us, right? Poverty was all around us. I definitely was not in the middle class until, far after I was older. But anyway, I remember being in class, and as kids do, once the teacher left, chaos ensued. So, things are flying, people are throwing stuff, people are talking because we've got a little bit of freedom in the class. I remember though, this particular incident, some of the boys in the class were throwing things in this young girl's hair. Now, again, I'm the same age, so I'm not the teacher, but I remember her turning around to look back to say something. Maybe she was scared, maybe she was intimidated, whatever the case, she turned around and nothing came out of her mouth. I witnessed them doing these things to her. I witnessed her turning around. I want you all to share because I want you to get this picture. I witnessed her turning around as if she wants to speak up, but nothing came out of her mouth. But the other thing that I remember, and this is at the heart of what I want to get to, nothing came out of my mouth either. I did not speak up for my friend in a moment where I could have absolutely made the difference in the way she was treated. So when I think about equity and I think about my equity story and why I do this every Thursday night, no matter who is on here, why I travel this country working with organizations and universities, why I have these conversations. I was just with the CDC a couple of weeks ago. Why do I do this? I do this for my friend. I do this for others like her. She had a voice. It just needed to be amplified. And guess what? If I had have spoken up, maybe she would have had the courage to speak up for herself. I do this because I believe all of us have been or will be in a position where you see someone floundering, not but because of their own fault, because they don't have the things that they need, and because of your voice, because you amplified their voice, you make the difference. That's what everyday equity is about. How can I make the difference? So this is not going to be a long show, but it's going to be a strong show. It's going to be a show where we have this very important conversation. And I'm asking you, hey, Angelina, hey, Courtney, good to see y'all. Thank you all for joining. I appreciate you. So tonight, after this conversation, at the end, as we always do, there's going to be a call to action because we're not going to waste these moments. This is an opportunity for us to hear and to share, but it's an opportunity even more so for us to go out into the world and speak up for those who don't have a voice, and not just speak up for them, but to make sure they know they've got their own voice. So, with that, I'm super excited to bring my guest on tonight in the person of Magda Perez. Hi, lady, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I am doing well. I am doing well. You look lovely. I'm excited about this conversation.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing your story. It was so impactful. So I was like, nodding my head while I'm here.
Well, you see exactly what I mean, and I know you know that that's a symbol of what we sort of do every single day. So, welcome to the Everyday Equity community. Courtney's welcoming you. There are people who are joining us. I don't know that I mentioned this, but this is only several weeks in the making. So, thank you. You're one of the first sets of guests, and I'm appreciative that you're here. So let me just start. I've got other equity stories, and I always like to start with that because if you're in this work, and I know the work that you're doing, and whether it's where you are now or even before, there's got to be a reason. Like there's got to be some sort of purpose there. So can you talk a little bit about your equity story?
Yeah. I was born and raised in Texas, Latino household, low income family too.
Hmm.
Very comfortable living in a small town. Where I grew up, everyone either looked like me or they were Caucasian. So we kind of merged, like the culture was just seemed to be similar.
Hmm.
Um, and in the 90s, in the very late 90s, I moved into Georgia because I needed a change. And that's when I experienced like racism for the first time. And when you feel racism, you feel it. And it's an indescribable feeling,
Right.
right?
Wow.
It's an undescribable feeling. Like
Yep.
you just feel it in your bones.
Yep.
And so when I was here in Georgia, I was like, you know what? I need to start doing some things for people who look just like me
Hmm.
and people who have a little bit darker skin tone.
Hmm.
Just because we shouldn't be treated differently just based on what we look like or the color of our hair or what,
Hmm.
where we come from.
Hmm.
So that is why I decided, you know what, I'm going to do this nonprofit work and I'm going to do it well.
Hmm. So let me ask this question, and I love that you said that because I know that there are people watching now or who may watch this later who may say, I don't directly work in a nonprofit, but maybe I'd like to do that. I mean, how did you kind of get your start?
The position just really landed like right in my lap.
Hmm.
I was I was pregnant and miserable working working somewhere, and a friend reached out to me and she was like, hey, we're doing this great work around early education.
Mhm.
We really want you to come on. We know your work ethic. And so when I started going, and actually when I started my working there and really just seeing the impact on the children's faces,
Wow.
right?
Mm.
That's what really got me to just, be so passionate about the work. And then later on, I transitioned into like a leadership and advocacy type of position
Mhm.
where I am helping parents to build up their leadership skills so that way they can advocate for the things that they need.
Mhm. I love that, and I wanna hit on that because that parent engagement and, lifting up and highlighting parents is extremely important to this conversation. I wanted to back up if you don't mind, and you can, this is all voluntary, so you can say, Matisa, you're doing too much, okay? But I'm curious because it struck me as I was just envisioning you in Texas, and you said, for the most part, there were a lot of people who looked like you, similar experiences, and then you come to a place where there is difference, and you noticed immediately, sort of in a feeling, I'm not in Kansas anymore, right? If I could say it that way.
Right.
So, what I was going to ask you is, did you ever experience any direct, either racism, discrimination, or anything direct, or was it mostly just kind of what you felt?
It was more of what I felt.
Okay.
I think later on in life, I did feel it a little bit more just when, politics happened. I don't know if you remember about the guy who was running for governor several years ago who had, the immigrant bus or whatever.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I actually got to see him in person. So, but yes, it was more of that feeling. And you can just feel it, you just feel like that different sensation.
Hmm. You know why I think that's important? I wanted to ask that question because there are some people who would say, well, give me an example, right? Point to somebody who was discriminated against you, or point to someone who called you a derogatory name. And like you, there definitely, I can point to some of those more blatant things, but I also can point to this idea or this sensation of, I just didn't belong,
Mm,
right? You
right.
just got this sense that you were looked at differently, or the expectation for you was different for someone else. And I wonder, Magda, if you could just speak a little bit to, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but this is interesting to me. How could that impact an individual? So for you, it pushed you to activism to get into the work, but for somebody else, it could impact them differently.
Right. It would make somebody just not want to actually just do anything, not go out in the community. Because, like, when you walk into a room and you feel a presence and you know that people are looking at you, it makes you feel unwelcome and
Hmm.
you don't really want to go into that space any longer.
Hmm.
So it kind of hushes your own voice, you know? So
Hmm.
you can either do one of two things. You can either go out and make the difference, or you can just let that affect you. And then if you let that affect you, that's going to affect your family life. That's going to affect your children's life.
Hmm.
So it's a lot of layers.
Hmm.
If you don't take the road that I did.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's super important because a lot of people talk about. We've not talked about race a whole lot on this show yet, but some people think, oh, we live in a post-racial world. Y'all did have President Obama, right? And you see, some of these millionaires and all of that, but it's hard to put in words sometimes. But there is a feeling, there is a knowing, there is. This just this tenor around you where you just feel like you don't belong. I gave this example a couple of weeks ago, and um I think I talked about it in my class. I might have talked about it on here, but I remember going to a Catholic wedding one time, and it was beautiful. First time I'd ever been, loved the ceremony, but I was very much an outsider. I felt like an outsider because there were a lot of symbolism and words and phrasings and kneeling and all the stuff that I did not know. And I had I could do one of two things. I could leave because I didn't feel like I belonged, or I could try to immerse myself in what was going on. And even better, there was somebody next to me who made sure that when it was time to kneel, they would just kind of whisper, "We're about to kneel now." And you know what that did? It made me feel welcome, even though I didn't understand everything. And so when I think about the work that we're doing every single day, even in our homes, like when I talk to our children, we bring some of these concepts up so that we're that person that's whispering to the person next to us, right? This is what
Mhm.
you need to do. And then eventually I kind of got it. I knew when it was time to kneel so that I didn't have to depend now on that other person, but I now had authority. I could do it in the context of, and I love what Lawrence just said, community, right? I like that,
Mhm.
that we're inviting people in. Even though I'm not Catholic and didn't become Catholic, I could be part of that community and still feel welcomed and feel like, there was a sense of belonging there.
Yes, yes.
So talk to me about, you don't have to get into the specifics if you don't want to, but just like the people that you serve, what are some of the issues that they have and what do you do?
So I work for a fairly large nonprofit.
Mhm,
I have two major buckets of work. So working with families, and then I also work with community organizations.
mhm,
So with families, we're doing leadership and engagement programming. So just really building their capacity to be able to advocate for their own needs, for the needs of their families, for the needs in their community. Um, when you serve families, you understand that they're multidimensional, right? So services and supports for each family are very different from each other. And so, as the organization, we offer housing supports, economic stability supports, basic needs and resources, family health,
mhm,
mental health, which has been a huge thing since COVID.
mhm,
Um, and then also making sure that youngest children have access to high quality learning, and also making sure that parents have educational classes for their leadership skills and communication skills.
mhm.
And when, okay, go ahead.
No, 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 I'm listening.
Okay. All right. And then when serving organizations, it's really just building their capacity to be able to serve and reach those families, right? And also, um, to offer specifically for them professional development opportunities, some knowledge gain, some training and technical assistance, and making those connections between the different organizations, because we have to be mindful when we're leveraging resources, because the resources are very limited in the nonprofit world. So just
Mhm,
bridging those gaps and connecting everyone together, and then also connecting some organizations, even parents and families, with some internal staff so that way they can get all the supports that they need.
mhm.
So, and then on top of that, just maintaining relationships with everyone.
So wait a minute. Okay, that's really good. So I want to talk about, if you don't mind, I want to talk about each of those three. I want to have a question about sort of the individual level, parents and kids, the organizations, and then that idea of relationships, because I think that's super, super important. So let me first start by asking about parents and children. And I love this idea of kind of wraparound kinds of services. One of the things that we people have done in the past is, oh, if I just do this one thing, then parents should be able to get on their feet, impact their kids or whatever. But what we realize is you're impacted by every single area. I'll tell you, Courtney says, I was about to say that resources are so limited. Yes. And Courtney, if you want to chime in about your work or even questions, I would love to hear them. I'm going to give us time at the end. But I did a simulation, Magda, today with my class. I teach sociology. And so
Mhm.
my students went through, there was this amazing game. You might have heard of it. It's called Spent. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
It was created by a nonprofit, and the whole goal is for somebody to have at least a simulated experience of making decisions every single day as someone who has very little money. So you start with $1,000 and you get 30 questions representing a question a day. So my students, and you're clicking, and it's, are you going to do this? You're going to do this. So the first question is, what kind of job do you want to get? Do you want to be a server where you can get tips, but you're only paid $8 an hour? And then you pick that job and then it goes to the next one. And it was so telling, and I'm going somewhere with this. It was telling because there were questions about, would both your gas and your electric bills are due. Are you going to pay for both of them? If not, are you paying for one or the other? And so I'm asking the students, like, what did you do? And a lot of them said, well, oh, I just paid my electric bill. Well, then the pop-up says, okay, but you can't cook. You don't have any heat. You don't have hot water. So this simulation, we talked about the stress of it. We talked about how it impacted education and relationships and all of these things, because I just wanted them to get at least some sensibility. The experiences, unless you're in it, it's hard to like really know. But we talked about decisions that people have to make every single day. So I said all of that to say what that reinforces is that as an individual, we're impacted by all of these various sectors. So my question to you, Magda, is what are the most common barriers that parents have to get over to even, make a little bit of headway?
What we see a lot of is basic needs.
Okay.
Basic needs, and just economic stability. They're not making a living wage. So some parents are even forced out of, specific areas of the county, and they have to move to lower income areas, and the resources there are just, they're even less. They're not available. So I think that's the main thing that we see. And also too, these families have to be able to just communicate. They have to be able to express themselves. They have to have goal setting. They have to have visioning, hope, so that way they can make a plan and a goal to advance these challenges, get past all these challenges, advance their families, and get past all these barriers.
Now, sorry, that's my little dog in the background. So this is my question. Do you see a lot of women who come in who really just want assistance, and so they're having baby after baby? Do you see, and hopefully you know where I'm going, do you see women who just come in, wanting assistance because they're duping the system?
Not necessarily in my program. I don't. And I feel like, that's a I don't like to think that way. I like to think that they have the best intentions,
Yes.
and that just something happened in their life.
Yes.
So I like to try to just determine and just identify like what happened to get you here and what supports do you need to move forward.
Yes. And I'm so glad you said that. I really was asking those questions tongue in cheek. And I do that because there are so many people who believe those myths, right? And of course, we know there are individuals in every sector, from the whatever sector you choose, there are going to be individuals who try to get over or whatever. But I really want the audience to understand, especially those who aren't in the work, if you're only looking at popularized stereotypes on television, those are the kinds of things that you're going to get in your mind instead of the hardworking individuals who are trying to make a way for themselves and for their children. And I think that's important. I like to debunk these myths. Otherwise, we're going to walk around, and when I say we, I mean generally speaking, really believing these stereotypes when there's really no basis to it at all.
Right.
So when we think about organizations, Magda, and I want to kind of weave this all together. You talked about the importance of people understanding the connections between the organizations. Is that what it is? That the organizations are not sort of working in silo, but they're working together?
Yes. So one organization is specialized in offering some types of services, another organization is specialized in typing in having these types of services, but the family needs both of these services. So let's connect and let's bridge and let's get this family what they need to move them forward.
Mm-hmm.
Really looking at what needs do you need, and not just doing a blanket approach that says like, here's a program, we hope we hope it'll work for you, or this is what we're offering, but also getting the voice of those who actually need those who are in need to say like, this is what I need,
Mm-hmm.
and finding out and informing, doing those data driven investments and approaches to say like, okay, let's use the data to really hone in on what these parents need, or these, or even sometimes these organizations, so that way then everybody can be successful.
That's good. So you got me thinking about something else. How shall I put this? Do the organizations play nice? So do you find that there's a lot of overlap in communication?
There is some overlap in some areas, and yeah, I'm a very positive person, but I
Good.
don't think that everybody plays nice. So, especially when it's tied to funding or it's tied to something like that,
Mhm.
and like your program works, you don't want the other folks to come in. So, what we do at our organizations, we try to be that collaborator to exactly to connect and bridge, because
Mhm.
I mean, ultimately the end goal is to make sure that everyone is okay, right? Because of being a good human being is making sure that your neighbor and your next person is good.
Mhm.
So I think when you look at it that way, I think that helps to give them, and we give them a little bit more passion, and it helps to influence them a little bit more to
Mhm.
kind of work towards this equitable services.
That's good. So what I hear you saying is often there needs to be a leader. Often there needs to be a leader, and in your case, as you called it, a convener, someone who can say, "Hey, you do this very well. You all do this very well. What would happen if we all came together? We could potentially impact the entire person, the entire family."
Right. And I think a lot of that is just having basic communication. Let's just have open communication. Let's create a shared goal.
Mhm.
Let's move to this together, because we can't just do this by ourselves. This has to be a joint effort for
Mhm.
everyone.
Mhm. And I think there's something else that you brought in, and Courtney mentioned this. She said, "I can speak on this. Everyone doesn't play nice, especially when funding is involved." And I think the thing that came to my mind, Magda, is I do know that there are a lot of nonprofits doing great work who just don't have the funding. I mean, it's not necessarily that it's ill intended. It's just like we need money to get this done, and if it feels like we're competing for money with you all, then maybe, we just kind of stay over here to get our piece of the pie. And for me, that speaks to bigger structural issues. So it's not just about sort of the nonprofits in the room, but it's about federal funding and where priorities lie and those kinds of things. Would you agree with that?
I do. I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. Courtney says, and build a pipeline and pass funding down the line. One group covered the west side, one covers the east side, one covers the south, one covers the north. I think that's good. I'm sure there are all kinds of strategies that nonprofits are talking about to make sure that everything is covered. And we also know that there's not always money to go around. So being able to have those conversations to say, this is where we have lack, this is where this group has lack, what can we do to kind of cover our bases? And I love
Mhm.
what Lawrence said, and I'll just kind of repeat that. He said that's equity. Equity is everybody, like, I'm going to put my pile, my stuff in the pile, and let's see how we can help the most people.
Right.
Talk to me, if you wouldn't mind, Magda, about relationships. That really struck me. Why is relationship building important for equity?
I think because you need to be real when you walk in space. Like, you really authentically, you have to be an authentic person who, for people just to buy in. Like, you can't just come in with some fake agenda.
Mhm.
um that's what I feel. That's just personally, I try to build relationships with everyone, whether it's with the families that we serve, whether it's with staff, and whether it's with community-based organizations or school districts, because I want to let everybody know, like, this is work that I really care about. This is heart work. Okay.
Mhm.
It's not just hard
Mm.
work. This is you're investing your heart and your soul into this work. And in order for people to be like really receive it, you have to be authentic and you have to have those relationships with people.
Mhm. So that's a tweetable. That is a tweetable, and I know it's X now. But I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna say that's a tweetable. And I just want to pause for those of you all who are just joining or will join sort of in the middle of this. We're talking about the importance of relationship building as it relates to pushing for equity. And what you just said, Magda, I think is so good. We look at this like, oh, it is hard. Oh my gosh, it's so hard. You hear people saying that. But what you just said is it's not hard work, it's heart work. Can you all type that on the screen for me? Just type it. I want to see it. It's not hard work, but it's heart work. And I think that's important because, and I talked about this as being purpose, right? When I tell my stories, it's purposeful for me because it's a it's a heart thing. Like I can literally see my classmate right now. I can see where I was sitting. I can see where she is sitting, and it impacts me. And that's the thing that keeps me going. The challenges are there, right? Lack of funding is there in some senses, but when you do it from the heart, then that's the thing that keeps you going. So I really, really like that. Y'all didn't put it in the comments, but I know somebody will later. Thank you. Thank you, Minister Virginia. It's not hard work, it's heart work. And for me, it's purpose work. Would you say that this is your purpose? Is this your call? How do you look at it?
I think so. I mean, I've been working with the organization for like 15 years, been doing this type of work for probably like 10 years. And I always think, if I don't do this work, like if I ever have to leave and stop doing this work,
Mhm.
I will literally just craft. That's all I'm going to do. So because it's like it's just so meaningful. And I mean, I'll give you a little bit. So I drive like forever to get to work. And but when I see the impacts of it, it's worth every minute. It's worth
Mhm.
every minute.
Mhm. Now, when you say drive forever, how far is forever?
um an hour and 15 to 20 minutes.
Wow.
one
One way.
one way.
Yeah. Yep. So it must be purpose work for you for sure.
Yeah.
And you know what I would say, if you weren't working with the nonprofit that you're working for, it would come out somewhere else. You
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I think this work just helps me to be a better human being.
Mhm.
And I think that's important. I think that's my purpose, is just, hey, let's just be a little bit better today than we were yesterday.
Yes.
Just try to improve each day, baby steps, like equity, like you just said, it's not this huge thing. It's baby steps. So let's
Mhm.
take these little baby steps to get there and
Mhm.
just be really caring for one another.
Mhm. So let me ask you this, because I want us we're nearing sort of the end, and if y'all have got questions, I want you to absolutely put them in the comment section. But my question to you is, because again, I want this to be relatable for people. Everybody's not going to work for a nonprofit. Some people are going to be teachers or doctors or any number of things. That's what they're doing right now. How does equity or the work that you do show up in your personal life, or does it?
I don't know. I don't know. I think it helps me to be a little bit better human person, like a little bit human being.
Mhm.
I think I'm so I started my equity journey, my learning journey, like
Mhm.
probably about 10 years ago. And still feel like I still have biases, um, unconscious biases. And it's just probably stuff that, I've grown up with and just the environments that I've been in and stuff like that. So I think for me personally, it's a continuous journey.
Mhm.
So just having that thirst for continually just educating myself. And I think also too, um, it's standing up for others as well
Yep.
when their voices are limited. So, like similar to your friend, I don't know, if I was your age when that happened, I probably wouldn't have the voice. But now that I'm older, I probably more than likely would be standing up for that person and voicing and being the voice for those who are silent, who are currently silent.
Mm-hmm. And I think the fact that you recognize the fact that you have unconscious biases, as we all do, to me, doing the work in your personal life, right? For me, equity is my lens. It's like I have these glasses on. The way I see the world it's funneled by it is impacted by my experiences of equity. And so when I think about my personal life, I try to intentionally, like sometimes I try to turn it off, but I can't. I'm always looking for ways to make, injustice just. I'm always, if I'm at a store and I hear somebody raise their voice, I'm looking around to say, okay, how are they going to treat this employee? Because there was just something in my brain that is looking out for other people. And so for me, when I think about that, and of course I'm not perfect, I definitely have my biases. Sometimes I have to call myself out, like Matisa, did you just think that?
Yep.
Right?
Me too. Me too. It's a
So
journey, girl. It's a journey.
it is. It's a journey. Did you really just say that? Like, did you laugh at that?
Or
But
did you think that?
yeah, talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes you just think things and I'm like, why am I thinking this? I know better. I
Mhm.
know better. So I think identifying it and knowing that I know better is a step in the right direction.
100%.
So even because then I at least know that, okay, I can anticipate that may happen again, and which will help me to prevent that from happening again, or acting that way, or thinking that in that moment.
Mhm. And you know what? That's the humanity of it.
Yeah.
Sometimes people feel like they can't do this work, if you will. I don't even like calling it work. I'm gonna have to think of a different term for it. But helping people and giving voice to things and making things fair, they don't think they can do it because, again, it just seems like and my friend Nancy Bryan is on. She is a DEI person as well. So I know she knows all of this stuff. But you see people who they just think, oh, this is so hard, or this is for a DEI person to do. But for me, this is hard work, right? This is ministry for me. Because when I think about the scripture that talks about the least of these and making sure that we do for the least of these, it might not mean, we think about that in terms of age sometimes, or, fill in the blank. But when I think about working with people and helping people, it's people who are marginalized, people who don't have the voice, people who don't have the resources. I feel like that's all of our responsibility.
Mhm.
And when we live life with that lens, we'll see opportunities to help things become better. I absolutely believe that it's incremental, it's intentional, but it's absolutely important work. So my last question.
Okay.
Um, if somebody were to ask you, and we kind of touch on it a little bit, but what can I do? What can I do to make things better? Or what can I do to help move the needle in this area? What would you say? If I don't know if you have kids, but let's just say you had a kid and your child asks you, what would you say?
Don't be afraid to have uncomfortable conversations. Don't be afraid to find out root causes, right? There's a reason behind why everybody does what they do.
Mm,
So it could be the way that they grew up, it could be anything.
mhm.
So don't be afraid to have that conversation, but remain open minded as well, because you need to receive it.
I love that. I love, love, love that. Did you all hear that, family? So, what can you do? Have an open mind and know that they come with their own experiences, understand that root. Let me give you this really quick story. Yeah, the why behind. I remember some years ago, I was teaching in a school in Kentucky. And, we have these uncomfortable conversations because I'm teaching sociology, race and ethnicity, structural inequality. And, we have this conversation. And this student, Magda, comes up to me after class, happens all the time. And the student starts to apologize. And I'm like, what are you apologizing for or about? And he said he had just found out that his grandfather was the grand wizard of the KKK in his hometown. Either maybe his great grandfather. So, of course, my mind started running back to conversations that we'd had and maybe ways that he had answered and questions that he had. And that was such an important thing for me. And the first thing that I did, even though this was uncomfortable, because like you're telling me this, and I'm a woman of color, and we're talking about all of these, challenging topics. But I really assured him that I was not, and this was my approach, that I was not going to hold it against him at all. Of course not. But it really helped me appreciate his conversation after that. Because if your grandfather or great grandfather has been indoctrinated, I don't know what they talked about in his entire life at the dinner table, right? I don't know. It doesn't make it okay, right? It doesn't make me think like, yay, thank you for telling me. But it did help me understand the root. And that was the point that I wanted to get to. It made me understand that a lot of what I was sharing in class with him was probably brand new or something that challenged his own worldview because of what he had heard. So, what if we all approach each other that way? Talk about relationship building, talk about how it is that we can help each other. What if I approach the person in the grocery store who looks in a way that maybe is stereotypical? What if I approach that person with wonder? That's what we used to talk about in education, right? Instead of being mad, wonder. I wonder why. Wonder why they said this. Within me, I'm like, girl, did you just you just say that? But from a learning perspective, I wonder, can you tell me more? Right? And I'm saying this for those folks who might not be in the work, but really you're in the work, right? Because of just being a human being. If we could stop the thoughts in our brains, stop the stereotypes. I love it, Deacon Sancy, discovery mode, and ask the question, I wonder, so that you can get to the root. Now, sometimes you get to the root and you still don't want to be there, right?
Yeah.
But the point to be made is when we are in life and we're using these strategies, I believe that we can attract each other to be better as opposed to automatically putting walls up where we away, push each other away. Well, family, I am so, so happy and thankful. Magda, thank you so much again for joining us.
You're
This was a great
welcome.
conversation. The work that you're doing is wonderful. Keep it up. Um, maybe we'll have you back another time, but I really
Maybe.
appreciate good, 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 good. I appreciate your wisdom. And I'll see you around, I'm sure.
All right. Thank you so much.
You are welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, family, this has been another amazing episode of Everyday Equity. I hope you took away those nuggets. Magda is a wealth of knowledge. She gave us some really great, great, great pieces. The one thing that just stands out with me or stands out to me, resonates with me, that it's not hard work, it's hard work. And can I just say, the people that seem the hardest to you, can you look at those relationships as heart work? Can you try to step outside of what you've always known to connect with somebody who is different? One of the things that I talk about in the work that I do with DEI trainings as I'm going across the country, there is this theory, and I want y'all to hear this. I'm so glad that you all enjoyed the show. Thank you again for being here. There is this theory called the contact hypothesis. Okay. And it's this idea that the more contact we have with people who are different, the more we will let down our walls and start to allow people to come in so that we can know people better, even though they're different in a number of different ways. We can know people better. What I've discovered, again, in the work that I do and even in the classes, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Thank you for that question, Courtney. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. What I find is professionally, we know that we have to work with people who are different. We don't have a choice. Okay. You're in a firm, you're in an office, you're in a school building, and everybody is different. You have to figure out how it is you can get along with them. But my question and my challenge to all of us, my call to action is to suggest that it's even better when you can intentionally and on a personal level connect with somebody who is different. When is the last time that you had dinner or lunch with somebody who's not like you? And you can pick in which way. When is the last time that you just had a personal conversation, not professional, it wasn't about work, but you got to know someone on a personal level? Within the faith community, we like to call that breaking bread together. That when you can go to dinner and you can sit across from someone and you can share a meal, you can share a space, you can share a conversation, it breaks down walls. It's breaking bread. But my question to us as we think about this equity journey, because remember, it's not a destination, is when is the last time that there was somebody who you didn't necessarily agree with politically, religiously, right? You didn't have the same experiences growing up, but you made the decision to break bread, to sit down, to have a conversation. It seems simple, but what I'm trying to show us is that this is not what? Hard work. It's hard work. So that's my call to action for you. That's my challenge. Next Thursday, we'll be back, same place, same time. And I want to know, did you go to dinner with somebody? Did you go to lunch? Did you have just a casual conversation? What did you learn? What walls came down for you? And I believe if we do that, I'm telling you, we're going to go farther on this equity journey than we could imagine. Thanks again for your time. Thanks for being with us tonight. I'll see you back here, same place, same time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here for Everyday Equity. I'll see you then.